When you first meet Luis, he's this weird guy trapped in a wardrobe, or a bag in the remake, and before you get much out of him, you get attacked by the Big Cheese. So, who is this guy? Well, let's find out. With a little help from Ashley, we can reach the village chief's attic, where we can find some logs about a boy and his grandfather that live on the edge of town. The kid is bright and has a fascination with the tales of heroics, especially Don Quixote. It's with some joy that the chief recalls being told one of these stories about a knight riding a donkey. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when the boy's grandfather falls ill and succumbs to what the townsfolk call a madness. The grandfather's house is set ablaze, and the boy stands outside his family home until the last cinders go out. After that, he disappears. You can also find a photo of the two taken before the old man's illness and discover that they're called the Navarro family. If you check Luis's case file, you can find his full name is Luis Serra Navarro, the only surviving member of his family. What's interesting is that this house actually exists in-game. If you look carefully at the same house where you find Luis captured, you can see it suffers from fire damage, which is not present in any of the surrounding ruins. You can also find another copy of the Navarro family portrait within, though this time it's not labeled. If you return here at night, you can discover a diary from an old man, lying on the same spot where you initially found Luis. It says that the boy was academically gifted and could have easily become a scholar were he not stuck in the village. It then mentions how the old man was attacked by a wolf, and even though he is certain he had hit it through the head, it still managed to bite him. Soon afterward, he writes that he hears thoughts that are not his own, and is beginning to lose control of himself. While it's not directly confirmed, Leon suffers similar symptoms due to his plaga infection, so it's pretty likely that the grandfather was infected as well. The infection is much slower, but this would be long before the development of the superior CDC plaga we see in-game.
When day breaks, you too will join our covenant.
With this information, it's easy to understand what happened to Luis after he disappeared. The boy left to a university to study biology, as stated in his case file. He was probably trying to understand what happened to his grandfather, and through his findings, he drew the eye of the Umbrella Corporation. Soon enough, he's hired onto Umbrella Europe's Lab 6 team, where he supposedly created several over-the-counter medications. This is obviously a lie, as Hunnigan will point it out in the case file for Lewis. The research Luis was actually working on was the Nemesis Project, more specifically the Nemesis parasite. This parasite attaches itself to the spinal cord of its host and is able to control its movements to the near human level of intelligence. According to a PlayStation interview with the Capcom's development team, these abilities are directly inspired off the Las Plagas parasite, which Lewis is most likely trying to reverse engineer. The Nemesis T-type we see in Raccoon City, though, was only completed after Lewis has already left the company. When Sadler contacted him about working on Las Plagas directly, Luis basically jumped at the chance. Stealing some of his old lab equipment, he sets up shop on Sadler's private island with Laboratory B. Luis then sets about trying to find ways to cure people of the plaga, and in these efforts, he is actually successful, creating a drug that can kill or at least slow the growth of the parasite, and eventually a treatment for killing it outright once it had hatched.
Feeling better.
Though it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, Sadler had no actual interest in curing the parasite, and only wanted to know the cures to prevent them from happening. Once he had no more use for Luis, Sadler secretly infected him and waited for it to take effect. Unbeknownst to him, however, Luis had secretly discovered a cure and removed the parasite once he realized he'd been infected.
Wait, you two?
Knowing that he was on borrowed time, Luis contacted an old Umbrella associate in hopes of getting an extraction, which instead attracts the attention of one Ada Wong. She demands all the research that he's been working on and a master plaga sample, which Luis agrees to supply in exchange for his freedom. Continuing to work on his parasite extraction machine, Luis bides his time, pretending to work for Sadler until he can find an opening, stealing the amber and escaping into the local countryside. This time, as a boy, hunting with his grandfather helps him keep a low profile even as the entire village is searching for him. As night falls, Luis knows that his pursuers will have an advantage, as the plagas are much more adapted to the dark than his own eyes are, which ultimately leads to his capture, but because only Luis knows where the amber is hidden, they keep him alive. For now. Their plans fall through though, as roughly the same time, Leon S. Kennedy arrives on the outskirts of the village. When he first encounters Leon, Luis speaks the code phrase and realizes that Mr. Kennedy here is an unrelated third party.
Oh, well, maybe just untie me then, huh?
When they both get captured, Leon manages to free them both, and Luis makes a break for it, heading for his extraction point. Unfortunately, Mr. Kennedy manages to draw the attention of most of the village's ganado to his location, and Luis is dragged into a gunfight with the horde. Successfully escaping, he discovers that both Leon and Ashley are infected, which changes his priorities. For perhaps the first time, his research could actually help someone. And remembering the way his grandfather passed, Luis decides to help cure the two of them. After recovering the amber, he sneaks into Salazar's castle. Using the underground laboratory's equipment, he creates 2 doses of the suppressing drug that he eventually gives to Leon. Knowing that his chances of surviving are higher if they stuck together, Luis goes on a short-lived adventure through the mines until Krauser catches up to them. It's here that Luis takes a knife to the back, collapsing as Leon watches in shock. While Krauser and Leon fight, Luis manages to get up and lose a few shots at the military man, barely saving Leon. As he begins to bleed out, Luis hands Leon the key to his laboratory and laments on how little good his work had done for the world.
Can change, right?
Maybe this time, things can be different. At least in the remake. The original Luis is a much less sympathetic character, being solely responsible for just about every monstrosity that Leon had to face.
How rude!
Also didn't really bother trying to help Leon or Ashley until the plot had progressed significantly, even dropping the pills he was supposed to give them somewhere. Whoops.
Oh, shit.
Thanks for watching, and while I made a few assumptions here or there, just about everything here is based on facts provided in the original and in the remake. Hope you enjoyed it, and hey, I'll see you in the next video.